The rain had been falling for 3 days without pause. A gray curtain blurred the world outside, softening the edges of everything's trees. Even the sound of her own thoughts. Claire Dalton sat inside her car, staring at the house through the fogged windshield. It stood at the end of the narrow lane, a Victorian shell leaning slightly to one side, its windows like half-closed eyes. She'd inherited it from an aunt. She barely remembered. A woman who, according to the neighbors, talked to the rain. Claire had almost sold it immediately, but some curiosity, guilt, maybe both made her drive there alone that morning. She wanted to see it once, understand the strange unease she felt every time she saw its photos in the lawyer's envelope. The moment she stepped out of the car, the rain seemed to hush, not stop, just lower its voice, as if it knew she was listening. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of damp wood and old dust. Her shoes left dark marks on the faded carpet. The hallway stretched into shadows, lined with portraits of people she didn't recognize. In every frame, the eyes seemed slightly turned away, as though caught glancing at something just outside the image. Claire explored slowly, tracing her fingers over the wallpaper. She found a gramophone in the living room, its horn twisted with green corrosion. Beside it, a small notebook rested on the table. The first line, written in her aunt's delicate handwriting, read, "If you listen carefully, the house will answer." She smiled nervously. A lonely woman talking to her own walls. That's all. But the more she walked, the more she felt it. The faint hum in the floorboards, like a pulse. That night, she decided to stay. The storm had worsened, and the idea of driving back through the flooded road terrified her. She found a dry room upstairs, cleaned a space on the bed, and lay down. The ceiling above her dripped in slow rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. It almost sounded like whispers. At some point between exhaustion and sleep, she heard it clear, a voice, faint as breath, coming from the hall. Claire, she sat up, her pulse hammering. The corridor was empty, but the sound hadn't been imagined. It had shape, direction, intention. She whispered back before she could stop herself. "Who's there?" No answer. Only the sound of rain, harder now, as if something outside was angry. The next morning, the house was colder. The rain had soaked through the roof in several places, but Claire didn't care about that anymore. She kept hearing the faint creak of steps, the soft sigh behind the walls. She found more notes scattered around the house, each in errant handwriting. Never open the basement door while it's raining. The echoes grow stronger when someone listens. The house remembers. By evening, her nerves were unraveling. She needed air, light, something real. She stepped outside and looked at the garden. The rain was relentless, yet the sound changed depending on where she stood, softer near the porch, sharper by the old oak tree. She closed her eyes and listened. It wasn't random. It was rhythm, like a pattern. She recorded it on her phone, and when she played it back inside, she heard something beneath the rain, a whisper, layered in the static. Her own name, repeated over and over, lower each time, until it became a growl. That night, she dreamed of her aunt standing at the window, drenched but calm, whispering to the storm. When Claire approached in the dream, the woman turned. Her eyes were clouded white, and her lips moved soundlessly. Behind her, the rain outside the window began to rise upward instead of falling, like a reversed waterfall. Claire woke, screaming. She packed her things at dawn, but the front door wouldn't open. The lock turned freely, yet the door refused to move, as though something pressed it shut from the other side. She tried the back door, same thing. Even the windows felt sealed. Her phone had no signal. By afternoon, she stopped fighting. She sat on the floor of the hallway, shaking, whispering to herself. Then she heard it again, footsteps above her, slow, deliberate, coming closer to the stairs. "Who's there?" she shouted. "Silence!" Then, a single word whispered near her ear, though no one stood beside her. "Remember?" She turned. Nothing, but one of the portraits on the wall had changed. The woman inside it now looked directly at her. The air grew colder. The house seemed to breathe, timbers creaking in rhythm with her heartbeat. She ran upstairs, desperate, and found the source of the sound. The locked door at the end of the hallway, the one she hadn't tried before. Something inside was whispering her name again and again, pleading now. She hesitated. Remembering the note, never open the basement door while it's raining. But this wasn't the basement. This was upstairs. Maybe it was safe. Maybe it was her aunt. She turned the handle. The door swung open into darkness. The smell hit her first wet soil and old stone. The walls inside glistened with moisture. And then she saw it. A mirror hanging opposite the doorway, old and cracked, its surface rippling faintly, as if beneath water. Her reflection looked wrong. The same face, the same eyes. But the other Claire was smiling. Slowly, the reflection lifted a hand and pressed it against the glass. Claire felt her own hand rise against her will. The moment their fingers met, the glass turned liquid. She screamed, trying to pull away, but something cold and powerful gripped her wrist and dragged her forward. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in the rain outside the house. Through the window, she saw herself inside, moving slowly through the hallway, calm and expressionless. The new Claire turned toward the window and smiled. She ran to the door, pounding on it, shouting her own name. But the sound was swallowed by the storm. The house stood silent, listening. The rain eased after a while, falling lighter, almost Händler. The windows reflected only the gray sky now. A passerby might think the place abandoned, but if you stand close enough to the front porch when it rains, you can hear it, the faint sound of someone knocking from inside, begging to be let out. And sometimes, when the lightning flashes, you might glimpse a face in the window that looks almost alive. The locals say the house still hears the rain. They, a voz italiano, because when it listens too closely, it remembers every name that ever tried to leave.